Hey everyone, my name is William, and today I'm going to just tell you my story, my testimony of how I went from being an addict and an alcoholic to following Jesus Christ. And it's been a long journey, and my life is so filled with so many things and a lot of hardships and struggles, but then on the other side of that, coming to know Jesus and what he's done in my life. And so I just want to share this with people so that maybe it will help someone. In the book of Revelation, it says that they will overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. And so our testimonies have power, and God can use them in very special ways. And so I just hope that that will happen through this testimony today. I've spent a few years now trying to figure out how to tell this story. I started working on a documentary film and putting hours and hours into that, and I've started writing a book, and I was trying to get it perfect, but over the past few days I just realized, it doesn't need to be perfect. I can just authentically tell my story and leave it unedited, just let it be as it is. And I think this might be the most genuine way to tell it as well. And so maybe those other things will happen in the future, but today I'm just going to talk and tell you a little bit about my life. My early childhood was pretty good. I lived a pretty happy life. I went to a Catholic grade school in Minneapolis, big city. I'm an only child, and there were a few things. I mean, my parents fought once in a while, but not very often. And for the most part, my early childhood was pretty good. But I can see how certain things started to corrupt me even pretty early in life. I was probably 9 or 10 years old when I got introduced to pornography. We had like cable TV, and one of the channels I was flipping through one day, it was like all blue and staticky, but you could like see something through it, and I stopped and I started watching, and it was pornography. And for some reason it was like kind of coming through the cable signal still, even though we weren't supposed to get that channel. And so I just became fascinated with it even at that young of an age, and it started doing things to my mind that were not good. And so I had that, and then things really started to change around the time I was like 10, 11 years old. We moved from the city, Minneapolis, to Webster, Minnesota, which is this tiny little town. It has like 800 people in it. My dad was a pilot, and so we had a house on this air park, so people would fly in and out of there, but it was really in the middle of nowhere. And so I also had to change schools at that time, and so I went to another Catholic grade school, but I just didn't fit in. I was from the city, and all the kids there were these country kids. A lot of them lived on farms and stuff, and so I felt completely out of place. And shortly after I started school at the new school, I started getting bullied pretty bad, and yeah, it was really tough. It got extremely severe at times. I mean, the goal of these kids was to make me cry every single day, and usually they succeeded. If not at the beginning of the day, by the end of the day, just constantly calling me names, telling me I smelled bad, or that I looked funny, or that I was too quiet, or I'd said dumb things, or whatever it was. They would just constantly poke and prod at me. They would take my things and make them like steal my stuff so I couldn't get to it and put it in their lockers, and just like dumb stuff like that, but it was constant. And so I just started dreading going to school. And after a while, like, I started just doing whatever I could to not get bullied. Like, that was, I was worried about, I wasn't worried about being myself. I was trying to please these guys that were bullying me so that I wouldn't get bullied anymore. And so I remember I started cheating. I was good in school. Like, that was one thing that I always excelled at. I always got straight A's in school and did my homework, and it was not very difficult for me. And so I started like giving my homework to them to copy, and then when I'd do that, they would treat me better. And so I was like, oh, maybe this is just okay, I'll just keep doing this. This is easy. And it wasn't good. And then it was like this weird thing where I was still friends with these kids because they were the only ones around, and so I wanted to fit in and be with them and just like be friendly with them. And so there were times where they were nice to me too. And one of the things that started happening, we started having these like sleepovers where we'd just hang out and stay up all night watching movies and whatever. And but in 6th grade, the sleepovers started getting a little strange because I was peer pressured into drinking alcohol for the first time. And I know my parents told me it wasn't good, but I was like, I need to fit in, so I tried it. And then soon after, I just started getting into it heavily. I was 12 years old, and I was binge drinking, like, weekly, pretty much every weekend. And I don't think I went more than a month or two without getting drunk from then until about the age of 25. So this was something I just got completely addicted to very early. And I mean, I wasn't drinking a little bit either. I was getting drunk as a 12-year-old. It's crazy to think about. And then, so we would be drinking at these little sleepovers and stuff, and then I started getting abused even worse. Like, I remember this one incident. We were playing Truth or Dare or something, and somehow, basically, they ended up telling me to strip naked, and they tied me to a pole in the basement on the cement floor, turned off all the lights, and just left me in the room. And I was terrified, and I don't know why I went along with it. Why I didn't fight back, I don't know. I was scared maybe that they were gonna beat me up or something if I didn't. But there were things like that happened that were just super traumatizing, and it was so constant. And then at home, my parents were starting to argue more, so the environment at home wasn't good either. And I just started getting into a very dark place. I would escape into music, and a lot of the music I was listening to was like Limp Bizkit and Korn and Eminem, and like these very angry types of music with swearing and very graphic, vulgar stories and pictures they painted, and that was what I was filling my head with. And so I was getting into this really dark place. And then we would also, sometimes we'd get drunk and go out and vandalize things. We'd sneak out at 2 in the morning and go like start ding-dong ditching people and TPing houses and things like that. I mean, they're just kind of mischievous, but I was getting into trouble and starting to get rebellious in a way, and thinking it was okay to do these things. And I didn't want to. I knew it was wrong, but like I just wanted to fit in, and that's kind of the persona I took with me. And then I was also just like started getting addicted to like the thrill and the pleasure of it. Going out and vandalizing things was exciting because hey, I could get caught, and so I was like really getting addicted to that, and part of that came out in like I got really into motocross and snowboarding and like these action sports, this adrenaline fueled lifestyle, and I became obsessed with motocross. So in the winter I'd be at school and I'd be partying it up with these kids, drinking and all this stuff, and then in the summer I would just be all about motocross, like working on my bike and reading motocross magazines and then going to the races, and it was awesome. I do enjoy it a lot. It was really fun, but it was so dangerous, and I had a couple of crashes that were, you know, worrisome. And then right before 7th grade, I was trying to clear this jump. It was a double, which means like two kind of triangles, and you got to jump over the one, land on the downside of the other one. And I tried to do it. It was about 75 feet long, and I didn't make it, and I just smashed into the upside, and like all my weight compressed on my legs, and I shattered both my ankles. It was something like 13 places. And so that was super painful, the most painful experience I had experienced up to that point. And I went to the hospital, and they gave me like extra strength Tylenol pretty much to cover the pain. And so I got home and I was just still in so much pain. It was agonizing. And my dad was a paramedic, and so I went to another hospital, and the doctor prescribed me Oxycontin. And Oxycontin is a very strong narcotic. They didn't realize the opioid epidemic hadn't started really yet, but so I started taking that, and yeah, it helped with the pain. But over time, I got addicted to that too. I would start like making up that I was in pain and telling my parents, oh, I'm in so much pain, just so I could get more of it. And fortunately, I was young enough at that point where my parents recognized this and they just cut me off. And so I was also young enough where I didn't know where to go get more. So I just went through the withdrawal, which was terrible. I was like crying uncontrollably out of nowhere. I would have like phantom pain that just showed up with no reason. Just mood swings, all this stuff, getting sick. And so it was a terrible time of withdrawal. But it also showed me like how dangerous Oxycontin was, and that helped me out later. So that was one of the tough parts in my grade school years. And then the last year of grade school was actually okay. I had this like light at the end of the tunnel. There was hope, because I would be going to a new school next year, and I wouldn't be going to the same ones that the kids that were bullying me were going to. So I was just like excited about that, to have this new start. And so yeah, I went to high school, and I wasn't getting bullied anymore, but that mentality of just pleasing others and trying to win the affection of others, or like do whatever it was I needed to do to fit in, instead of just trying to be myself and letting myself fall into whatever group that, you know, I sort of fit in with. And so pretty shortly after going to this new school, I didn't have many friends, but the way I started making them oftentimes was through parties and just drinking excessively. I was trying to like be the coolest guy by being the guy that could drink the most and get the drunkest, and it ended up in a lot of just worse behavior. Like everything that started in middle school just got worse. I got more into pornography at that point, and it really started to warp my mind. Pornography is so dangerous because you start seeing like sex as this, it as a drug almost. Like you start seeing people as objects to be used to satisfy that urge you have. And so I started seeing girls like that. I was like, what can I get out of them? And I started sexually experimenting when I was like 16 years old, and just got into that. My first sexual experience was I was drunk and high in a graveyard, like just super weird and wicked, and that was my first sexual experience. Not something out of love and respect for the other person, but this weird, twisted sort of experience. And I mean, the things I was doing just got out of control. I was like getting so drunk that I would wake up at home in my room, the car would be in the garage, and I had no idea how I got there when I was like partying 15 miles away in town. And I mean, I can just see God working in my life even at that time. Even through these stupid, reckless things I was doing, He still protected me somehow. Like, I seriously should be either in prison or dead from all the things I've done, and somehow I'm still here. And so that persona just kept developing. I started smoking pot then. I think I was 16 when that started happening, and I would start skipping school and going to get high, and somehow I still did well in school. I still had good grades and everything, so I was like living this double life, where with some people I was like picture perfect child, and then with other people's I was this like party animal rager guy. And so I had this double life going, and there was I just did some really terrible things. The vandalism got worse too. Like, I remember one night we went out and we're getting drunk together, and I would just get out of the car and stomp on someone's windshield and think it was hilarious, shattering it. And then we'd get in the car and drive off and go somewhere else, and I'd do it again. I was like, hey, look at me, I'm so cool and reckless, look at this damage I can do. It was ridiculous. There was another night I got so drunk that I was just sitting there. I don't remember this at all. But I punched a girl in the face for no reason at all. It's just crazy to think about. That morning I had woke up and I was literally locked in my car. They put the child locks on, and I was stuck in my car, and there was vomit everywhere, and I had to go to work soon. So I think I had my cell phone with me. I called someone, they came and let me out. I got dressed, went to work hungover, and then the next day I went back to work again, and one of my coworkers was like, what happened? I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, you punched this girl in the face. I was just like, what? I was actually in shock, and I just did so many stupid things because of my addictions, and oh man, it just got worse and worse and worse. There's a lot more stories I can tell and a lot more details. I'm probably leaving out a lot of the things that happened along the way. I'm trying to still keep this somewhat concise, and maybe I'll be able to put them out in another format in more detail at another time. But my camera died there for a second. So yeah, but I was just in the worst of sin and wickedness that you can imagine, and it continued from there. towards the end of high school, I started trying harder drugs. I took ecstasy for the first time. I'd seen these people on it a couple nights earlier, and they were just like having so much fun, and they just looked like it was amazing. It's like, I gotta do this, whatever it is, I gotta try this. And so yeah, I got some, and it was amazing. Like, it felt so good. And so I just wanted more of it, and I became addicted to that. Started trying other things. I tried mushrooms, Adderall, like, I just loved it. That's all my life became. It was like, I need to live for this pleasure that I'm getting. And it became very self-centered, and so I kept going, and in college it just got worse. Yeah, I was still using tons of pornography, and there was this one time shortly after freshman year, I went to this music festival. It was like a 5-day long thing, and there were basically no rules there. Like, everyone just did whatever they wanted. We were literally walking around like shouting, asking people for drugs, and they would come up and be like, yeah, here man, I got what you need, what do you want? And so I tried LSD there, and that was mind-blowing. Like, I just remember thinking like, whoa, I didn't even realize you could see the world in this way. Like, the perspective change was so radical, and it seemed like time went super slow. One day seemed like a week. It was crazy. And so I spent these 5 days just completely drugged out. Like, I started combining things. I was taking ecstasy and LSD, smoking pot and drinking and Adderall and all of this all at the same time. And I loved it. I was like, this is like paradise. I love this. It's so fun. And so that's all I could think about, was just using drugs. And I started applying that mentality to everything. It was like, what can I do to give myself the most pleasure? Like, how can I fill this urge? And I started using women in that way. That the year after that festival, I came back and I started hanging out with this girl a lot, and even though this girl was awesome, I treated her like crap. And within about 2 months, I started dating this other girl at the same time. And eventually I just dumped the first one, was like, no, I'm gonna go with this other one, and treated her like crap. And I was just so reckless. In the book of Romans, it talks about people glorying in their shame, and that's exactly what I was doing. I was like trying to be as cool as possible by being as reckless and stupid as possible. I was getting blackout drunk probably 3 times a week. It was insane. And I remember I probably went through like 6 or 7 cell phones, because I would get so drunk, I would leave them, I would go to sleep with my clothes on, and my phone would be in my pocket, and I'd pee myself. And it would literally just get water damage on my phone, and I would have to go get a new one. It was crazy. I did that, like I said, 6 or 7 times. And I just made fun of it. I'm like, oh yeah, I peed again, ha ha ha. And really it was embarrassing, but I just wanted to look cool, so I like made it this joke, like, yeah, that's how messed up I get. And it was so stupid. But I kept doing it, and then things started to get rough. At the end of that sophomore year, I broke up with my girlfriend and dropped out of school. I just moved back in with my mom, and I was still like smoking and drinking all the time, doing ecstasy still. But I started going to a very, very dark place at that time. All of a sudden, this thing that was awesome and fun and was giving me so much pleasure turned into this like slave master. I was a slave to it, and it was a dark place to be. I became extremely depressed. I had so much anxiety that I was having panic attacks. I literally thought I was dying. A few times I went to the hospital. I called up a friend, had them drive me to the hospital because my heart was racing so fast and I thought I was going to die. But it was just anxiety. It was a panic attack. But that was happening regularly. I was starting to hallucinate. Even when I was sober, I would be laying in bed and I would see like these shadowy demon-looking figures, faces coming out of the wall and stuff. It was terrifying. I thought I was losing my mind. Like, you don't realize how scary that is to think that you're actually like losing your mind, that reality, you don't know what reality is. So I was terrified. But in my like twisted, delusional state, I just thought that the drugs were what was gonna like make me feel better. So I kept going back to that. I'm like, well, this is how I'm gonna fix the problem by doing more of it. And it was insane, but that's what I kept doing. After being so depressed that year, I just like knew something needed to change. I didn't change the right thing maybe, but which would have been getting sober. But I decided to apply and go back to school, so I transferred to the U of M in Minneapolis and spent a couple more years there. Everything just got, I mean, I feel like over time this was just amplifying and amplifying, and it was more pornography, more drugs, more alcohol, more sex, more ridiculous, stupid things. And I don't know, again, God had to have been watching out for me, even though I completely rejected him. I was an atheist at this point. I made fun of people that believed in God. Yet, somehow, I didn't end up in prison. I didn't crash my car and kill someone. I'm still alive, and so he was watching out for me even in the midst of the worst of my sin. That's crazy. And I just kept using women, and I was like so addicted to sex, and I was becoming such a bitter, angry person that I wasn't having any success. I was just like going out, getting wasted, trying to pick up girls, and it wouldn't work. Like, no one wanted to go home with me. I was a sloppy, drunk mess that was bitter and angry. But there was one night, I went out and we were at this club, and there was this just tall, beautiful woman there, and I started hitting on her, and I got extremely drunk, but I was like, yes, this woman wants to go home with me. I'm like, great. And I don't know what happened, but I was so drunk, she told me she was trans. And I was like, oh, yeah, whatever that means. It didn't even register in my mind what she was trying to tell me. And so I'm like, okay, well, she looks like a woman. What does that even mean? I was just drunk and didn't care. And so I went to her home with her, and once we took our clothes off, I realized it wasn't actually a woman. And I freaked out, and I ran home as fast as I could, and I was just panicking, and I just jumped in the shower immediately because I felt like dirty and unclean. It was like, and who knows what I made that person feel like. It was just this ridiculous situation because I was stuck in this debauchery of a life, and yeah, I just did ridiculous, stupid things because of this, and I hurt so many people along the way. It was so bad. And then I was having like a mental breakdown because of all this. I'd been working as a valet, parking cars at these fancy restaurants, and one day I was thinking about it. I'm like, I'm literally driving in circles. I just felt stuck in this place. And it was like a metaphor for the life I was stuck in, the lifestyle I was stuck in. And I don't know what happened, but one day I went into this fancy, super fancy steakhouse sushi place. And I go in and I hand the hostess this camera. Don't know what happened to it now, but I was like, hey, film me. And I just like start yelling. I'm like, hey, everybody, I quit. I'm sick of this job. And like went out and I just left. And I don't know what I was thinking. It was ridiculous. And so, yeah, I didn't have that job anymore, and I spent the whole summer just living on the savings I had. I had finally saved up some money, and now I had to use it to support myself while I was unemployed. And I was just in a lousy, miserable place. And that summer, it was like shortly after I graduated from college, a friend invited me to go test ride some dirt bikes, and I hadn't rode for a while, but I was like, yeah, that sounds awesome. You know, I haven't done that in a while, and I remembered how much I loved it, and so I went, and we were riding these brand new bikes, and it was the last session of the day. I was trying out this bike, and I pull out onto the track, and my friend's right in front of me. I see him, and I'm like, oh, I gotta pass him, like that pride inside me. So I like tried going off this jump, and I cross-jumped it and crashed, and I shouldn't have, you know, I just wanted to pass him right away. I wasn't patient at all. And there was some rider right behind me who couldn't get all the way, and he just smashed into me. And I was paralyzed instantly. And I knew I was paralyzed. I just had this thought like, crap, my life is never going to be the same. I don't even think I want to live right now. And it was the worst pain you can possibly imagine. Like, I don't think you can even imagine it unless you've been through it. It was so painful. I just wanted to die. And so I was airlifted to St. Mary's Hospital, part of Mayo Clinic in Rochester. And one of the last things I remember hearing is, you might not make it through this surgery. My vertebrae got pushed forward into my aorta, which is the biggest blood vessel in your body. And so if that would have burst, I would have just bled to death. So that's what I went under thinking about. And at that point, I was just like, well, if that's it, that's it. You know, whatever. I didn't have any inclination to pray. I didn't think about anything. I was just like, well, I guess this must be the end. But I woke up, and yeah, I had to go through a couple months in the hospital. I had a crazy infection that I got at one point, and was just had a super high fever and all this pain, and like they didn't know what was wrong with me. I was getting tests done every day on me, but I made it through it. And I spent a lot of time by myself. I had neglected so many friends and family for so long that, I mean, yeah, my parents were there, and there were people that started showing up, and I noticed that, but there was also a lot of time I spent alone, and I was angry, worried about the future. I felt like everything got stripped away from me. I couldn't go play sports anymore the way I used to. I couldn't just be spontaneous. I had to plan everything out. And I got home, and this mentality kept up, and I was still living in my old ways a little bit. I pretty much stayed sober. I smoked pot a couple times to try and help with some of the pain I was having, but I pretty much stayed sober from that point on, which was a good thing. But again, there was nothing to fill that void that was left by that. I had been covering up any pain I was in with drugs and alcohol and pornography and sex and all this stuff for so many years that when it got stripped away from me, I was like empty and depressed to like an extreme level. So I started trying to fix this. I started getting into spinal cord injury advocacy to try and like find a way to make myself the way I was again. I started reading self-help books and trying weird things I found on the internet, like new agey sort of stuff, and none of it was working. And then randomly one day I just had this inclination to start reading the Bible. I downloaded a digital copy on Amazon, and I just opened it up, started at page 1. Okay, here we go, Genesis. I'm going to read through it. And I had all this time. I was stuck at home anyways. So I started reading, and my heart started softening up a little bit. I started being open to the idea that God existed. And so I kept reading and reading. Sorry, my camera died off on me again. It does these like 20-minute bursts for some reason. But anyways, so I've been reading the Bible, and then one night I had this dream, and in the dream I was like reliving a lot of the bad things I had done, and I felt like I was being accused of them, like I was on trial almost, and there was like this heavy weight of guilt on me, and there were like demons chasing me. There was like this, I remember this half man, half bull sort of figure chasing after me, and it was terrifying. It was a nightmare. But all of a sudden I appeared in this like peaceful sort of garden area. It was bright and green and just very lovely, and I see this gravestone with the Celtic cross on top and a bright, bright light shining from behind it. And I just went up to it and I said, "Okay, God, I give up. I need the help of Jesus Christ." And the very instant I said his name, this just wave of cleansing went off inside. All of that stuff just disappeared. It vanished instantly. Like the instant I said his name, it was just gone. And I knew who he was. I didn't see or hear anything. I just knew. Whoa. Like, you're him? Whoa. I was blown away. It was so powerful. And I woke up and I'm like, what was that? Like, that wasn't a normal dream. I'm freaking out. I'm like scared and excited and full of all these different emotions, and I can't sleep. It's like 4 a.m. So I just go to the Bible and I pick up right where I had left off. And it happened to be Job 33. And at the beginning there's this passage. It goes, "For God speaks in one way and in two, though man does not perceive it. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falls on men, while they slumber on their beds, then he opens the ears of men and terrifies them with warnings, that he may conceal pride from a man. He keeps back his soul from the pit, his life from perishing by the sword." I was just like, that's what just happened. I started weeping. I'm like, this is real. Like, Jesus is real. And so I don't even know what to make of this. It's But I have hope for the first time in a long time. In years, I felt like this was the first real hope I had. And so I'm going through my day, like, just can't stop thinking about this, and I happened to see a picture my cousin posted on Instagram. It was in dedication to our grandpa who had passed away exactly 1 year earlier on that day. So I'm like, huh, that's kind of strange. I saw this gravestone in this amazing dream I had. What's going on? And I talked to my mom about it and realized the exact time I woke up from my dream was the exact time my grandpa had passed away. So I'm like, what's going on here? This is strange. And I had never been to his gravesite, but I went that day. I'd never seen it, nothing. But the Celtic cross from my dream was on his gravestone. I was just like, okay, God, I get it. You are real. And my life changed dramatically after that. At that point, all I had was reading the Bible, but I started praying, and I believed he was real from that point on. And so I started seeking him, and he answered those prayers. I prayed for friends, and he gave me friends. I prayed for a church, and he gave me a church. He just helped me through so many things. He started freeing me from the addictions I had. I stopped looking at pornography. Like, haven't looked at it since. I have been sober like this entire time, and I have no urge to use anymore. He just freed me from these things that had been tormenting and enslaving me for so long. And he just works exactly as the Bible says he does. Like, he frees the captives. He sets the enslaved free. It's like, it's amazing. And even though I'm in a wheelchair now, like, I'm paralyzed, a lot of people think my life must be worse, but my life is so much better because I have hope. I have hope of a future. And I have hope of eternal life with God. And I don't have these addictions, these things I'm enslaved to anymore. Yeah, I'm not perfect. I screw up a lot. A lot of the habits I picked up are still with me, and I hurt people sometimes. But I also have a relationship with Jesus now, and he says we are new creations in him. I feel like a new creation. I feel like he completely transformed me. And I do things now that I would have never done before. I enjoy hanging out with the poor, not for recognition or anything like that, but just one-on-one sometimes without anyone seeing it, just because it's a great thing to do and help someone and like see someone who's been completely starved of love and rejected, and all of a sudden they're getting love, and it's just amazing. They get to experience God's love for them and things like that. I don't even know what to say. God has transformed me in such a powerful way. He's real. And he made us for a purpose. We have a purpose. And it's to be with him and to praise him and love our neighbors. And yeah, there's still a lot of hardship. My life isn't easy, but there's a sense of camaraderie there. I think that's one of the reasons Jesus took on flesh, and why he suffered the way he did, why he was crucified, why he was beaten and mocked. Because just like anything, when you get to experience things together, it just draws you closer. And so I think of, if you go through some crazy workout with a sports team you're on, that binds you together with camaraderie. If you go to war together and you've had that experience of how terrible it is, you share that with other people that have gone to war, and instantly you have this connection. And so, yeah, sometimes we have to go through suffering, but it actually unites us to Jesus. We have this special thing we can share with him, and he knows what it's like, and we know what it's like, and so we have that sort of like just special club with him together. I don't know. There's a special bond between us because of that. I'm just experiencing so much love right now. I just want to make Jesus known to people. I want people to see how he can change their lives, your life. That's why I'm sharing this story. Some of that is very personal stuff that, it's embarrassing, and I feel bad about it, but the only reason I'm bringing it up is so that you can see that even the worst of people, the people who have done terrible, terrible things, no matter how far gone you are, Jesus can still heal you and transform you and give you new life. I don't have anything else to say about that. Turn to Jesus, read the Bible, just say a prayer. Say, Jesus, show up in my life. Show me who you are. And he will show up, and it will be amazing for you.